Hi everyone, James here. Welcome to another video. This is going to be a response to Andy Cloudy Milder, who made a very interesting video in the last few days, and it was all about rules that we impose upon ourselves, or not, as the case may be, when we're buying records. When we go out shopping for records, what kind of limitations do we place on ourselves? How do we decide what is going to be worthy of picking up and including in our collection and what isn't? I'll just do a really quick recap. I will link to Andy's video so you can go and watch it, because I may not do justice, but if I've understood him correctly, Andy views record collecting a little bit like, say for example, like coin collectors may decide that they just love coins and they're going to just collect as many coins as they can. You might get other collectors who decide, no, I'm only going to collect, I don't know, French coins from the 19th century, and I don't want any Italian coins from the 20th century, I don't want any Spanish coins from the 14th century, etc. So what I suppose what that kind of collecting is a very well, I suppose a very well defined seam that you want to quarry. You know, you want to just find rocks of that shape and size, and you don't want any other rocks creeping in there. Now I found this really interesting because I've never really heard anybody on the VC express it in quite that way before, and it certainly gave me pause for thought, because my immediate reaction was I don't think I have any rules. I don't think I set myself any rules like that. And but then I kind of got thinking, and I thought, well, okay, let's try and challenge myself. Can I come up with 10? And I did. I actually came up with 10 rules. Now, these rules, I'm going to come at this from a different angle. These rules are not necessarily rules for me. They're more kind of guidelines. And it struck me that Andy was almost, he kind of feels uncomfortable or even guilty sometimes if he feels like he's strayed into dark waters, if he's broken certain promises that he's made with himself. Now, my rules are not quite the same. They are more guidelines. They are things that I've learnt to go through in my mind. You know, when I'm out digging and I'm looking for records, and I think to myself, am I going to get this for the collection or not? I think these things do evolve over time for me. When I first started getting into buying records heavily again, maybe 2.5 years ago, I was splurging and buying anything really. Now I've calmed down quite a lot, and so it was certainly interesting trying to work out, well, what are the guidelines that I've come up with. Now, in Andy's world, the four records I'm going to show will seem very arbitrary. I mean, these are my latest pickups. This is the Frank Sinatra album, Watertown. These are all from Goodwill shops, charity stores. We've got Motown Chartbusters Volume 5. And these two I actually picked up today. We have These Are My Songs by Petula Clark, Pet Clark, as she's credited with being here. This is a mono album, $2.99. And I also grabbed Linda Ronstadt, Heart Like a Wheel, $2.99. So it may look, in Andy's version of things, it may look like these records are fairly arbitrary purchases. And it's true to say, I don't have that same genre-specific and time-specific set of rules that will stop me buying certain things, or will kind of allow me to buy certain things. But all three of these records do actually pass my 10 rules or guidelines that I've now worked out, are the ones that I follow. So let's just run through these, and I suppose the idea is that people can then make videos of their own responding to this if they want to, or just use the comments down below. So let's just run through these, and hopefully I won't take too long doing it. So my first rule, or my first guideline, is no scratches or minimal scratches. Now, I will sometimes buy records that are scratched a bit, but what I tend to do now in shops, I will kneel down in the shop with the record, sometimes for quite a long time, and I will just run my finger over the scratch or you know, all the scratches, and I will just feel the scratch. Feel, is it a bump? And then I'll try and picture my stylus encountering that. You know, it might not affect the sound of the record, but I'm thinking of the stylus. Is that too much? Do I really want my stylus to be running over that scratch every time I play the record? And if the answer finally comes through to me, actually no, I will probably put that record back. Now, if it's a record I really, really want, then sometimes I might decide to take a gamble. But more and more now, as time has worn on, you know, unless it's a real grail, if there's nasty scratches on that record, I will put it back. Okay, so there we go. You know, I mean, because you don't want damaged styluses, do you? Right, okay, now, number 2, the record should not be overpriced. Now, I've got this reasonably arbitrary upper limit now of £20, and it's quite rare that I will buy a record that is £20. The only reason I would buy a record that was £20 would be if it was a genuinely difficult to find album. You know, the last time I bought a record for £20, I think, was the first Rolling Stones album, the first British Stones album, which was in great condition, popped up in my local Oxfam, £20. I'd literally never seen a copy before, so I bought it, you know. But it's got to be something pretty damn special for £20, and I do have a rule with myself: I will not go over that. I can't imagine what record I would have to see in the wild that I would have to buy that was more than £20. Okay. Number 3, reasonable condition sleeve. Okay, so I mean this is a reasonable condition sleeve for me. There are some stains under here, not too bad, like, you know, a bit of ring wear. I won't buy records if the sleeve is genuinely scummy. You know, if the sleeve has started to fall apart and is kind of soggy, you get that kind of soggy cardboardy kind of thing, where you think, I don't really want that on my shelves. You know, it's kind of a little bit mouldy. It might be, you know, it might start to affect the sleeves around it. Also, you know, I personally don't like to handle sort of really mucky, horrible sleeves. So, generally speaking, now the sleeve has to be kind of pretty much intact. I will go with a bit of ring wear and a bit of staining. But if the spine is completely gone, or if the cardboard's hanging off, you know, if it's gone soggy, if there's mould there. I do have 1 or 2 records from a couple of years ago that I bought with that mould on, and I'm a bit uncomfortable with them being there, you know. So there we go, reasonable condition sleeve. Right, now the next one is maybe a more interesting one, because it kind of does relate to music. Now I've put no classical or kitsch. No classical or kitsch. Now, the reason I put no classical, I do actually love classical music. I have a fairly, not large, but I have a kind of a CD collection of classical music, which I do listen to with some regularity. Now, there are thousands of classical records out there. I see them all the time in charity shops. I just do not have room for them, you know. I mean, I love them on lots of different levels. I grew up around classical music. My dad had classical records in the house. I love the covers. And you know, I do love the music, but if I start to buy classical records, that is a downward slope. I do not have the shelf space for it. You know, I really don't. You know, maybe at a future date when I've got a bigger house, if I ever have got a bigger house, then I could maybe look into starting to buy classical. I'm kind of a little bit the same with jazz, really. You know, I would buy a lot more jazz records than I do, but I just don't have the space for them. You know, I've got some really nice jazz CDs, and I do own jazz records, but I just don't want to go down that road, because jazz and classical, you know, you can get your hands on them quite easily in in Goodwill stores and so on. And you know, kitsch records, very occasionally I'll pick some up. I bought a few. What's his name? Henry Mancini records last year. You know, but I mean, again, even though the covers are great, and you know, some of the music can be very good fun, music you can put on in the background at parties and stuff like that, but I just don't have the shelf space for it. So even if these records jump out at me, like, you know, Hammond organ records with these incredible sleeves, I do sort of have a rule to myself now: no, let's just don't go there. I do not have space, you know. Right, number 5. I will not buy a record now if I already own a record by that person or band or artist which is a bit neglected in my collection. So this morning I saw a Barry White album in the shop. Now, in fact, it failed the scratch test anyway. There were some quite nasty bumpy scratches on there. But the other reason is I've got a couple of Barry White albums on the shelves through there, and I am going to get round to them. I just haven't yet got round to them, and they've been there for about, I think one's been there for about a year, one's been there for 6 months. I haven't got around to cleaning them yet. I haven't got around to listening to them yet. So I saw this Barry White record, and I thought to myself, well, you know, I've not listened to the two that I already have, so why am I picking up another one? So generally speaking, if I see a record by an artist and I know I've got records by that artist already and I haven't listened to them yet, then why do I need another one? Okay. Number 6, I put not if I have it on CD. Now, until recently, I've been doing this. You know, last year I had a little run of albums, Lou Reed albums and Stones albums, which I had on CD. I wanted them on record. If it's albums that, you know, you very, very rarely see them in the wild on vinyl, then I might break that rule or guideline. But I've decided now to really try and think straight about this. You know, I have that CD already. Is it a good CD? Well, if it's a good quality CD, it's already taken up shelf space on my CD shelf, so therefore why do I need it on vinyl? I will say out of all those rules, that one is likely to be one that I break. You know, so you may well see me in my next vinyl update saying, oh, I've got this record, I've already got it on CD. So just take it with a pinch of salt, that one. But I'm trying to go in that direction now. Only buying vinyl albums if I don't already own them on CD. Right. This next one's a bit complex, and it requires you to kind of put yourself into the shoes of someone who's buying records in the shop. You know, it's hopefully it's not going to be difficult for anybody. I've put, do not buy a record if I feel I am capable of putting it back in the box. So you all know that feeling. You've got a record in your hands. Now, I can already see this is kind of fallen down. I was capable of putting this one back. You know, Linda Ronstadt. I'm not a big fan of hers, but only because I've never really heard her music. You know, one of the main things that motivates me for buying records is the act of discovery, the act of hearing something I've not heard before, especially when it applies to an artist that I don't know. You know, I don't really know the music of Linda Ronstadt. I thought this would be an interesting pickup to listen to get to know her music a little bit. I've tried to make that rule, but I mean, I could have put that one back and I didn't. So maybe what it applies to is if you've got a biggish stack already, you know, and then you decide, well, okay, can I put some of these back, you know? So only walk out of that shop if you really feel like, I don't want to put that back, and you have to sort of, you know, take a breath and just think, do I need that record, or do I want that record, and try and wrestle with that kind of inner process, which I sort of didn't do with that, but it was dead cheap. I said before, these are not hard and fast rules, these are guidelines, okay? Number 8, nice and simple one. I've just put not if I already own it. Now, I have done this before. I'm sure lots of us do. We pick up records that we already own because we think it might be a better copy than the one we've got, so we take it home and we try it out. Or maybe we pick it up in order to pass on to somebody, you know. I have been doing that, and I've decided that's going to be one of my guidelines now, so to stop picking up records I already have, unless it's clearly obvious to me in the shop that it's an upgrade. Right, number 9. I'm going to try not to pick up an album just because it would be an act of being completist, you know, about a particular artist or a particular collection. So interestingly, this kind of is the opposite of what Andy's saying. Andy's thing is more like, well, I'm collecting this kind of records, so therefore when I find one, I'm going to have to buy it for the collection. Now this morning I saw a couple of records in Oxfam. I saw Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits, and I also saw Tango in the Night by Fleetwood Mac. Now I have records by Dire Straits, I have records by Fleetwood Mac. The only reason that I would have picked either of them up would have been thinking, oh well, I've got a little collection of Dire Straits now, so if I get that one, then that will be another album in the Dire Straits collection. Oh yeah, you know, Tango in the Night, I'll get that, because I've got Rumours already, and I've got the Fleetwood Mac album, and you know, I've got one of the others. So you know, therefore, if I get another one, then that you know, that extends the collection of Fleetwood Mac, or that's just another Dire Straits album for the collection. I've got to be really into the artist really for that. You know, I'm not a massive Dire Straits fan. I'm not a big, huge fan of Fleetwood Mac. Not the California incarnation. So, you know, I kind of put those back. A year ago, I may well have kept them, but now I'm thinking to myself, no, I'm not just buying records because I have some records already by that band, and if I get another, then that collection is starting to grow legs. I don't really want to go there unless I really like the artist. And finally, number 10. I can't even read my writing for this one. Okay, so so this one is about record collection staples. Now we all presumably know the kind of concept of a record collection staple is a record which tends to crop up in record collections, and therefore I sometimes feel pressured to buy a record because you think to yourself, well, surely no record collection will be complete without a copy of that. So that kind of, maybe that goes back to the Dire Straits one again. You know, what serious record collector of pop and rock records does not have a copy of Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms in their collection? It's just one of those records that you kind of have to have it because it was a massive album, a very popular album, a good album, you know, in its way. And you know, Dark Side of the Moon, you know, the kind of records I'm talking about, ones which, you know, most people have if they have a broad collection of kind of, you know, pop rock albums. So I'm not going to keep going down that route of saying, well, I've got to get that record because everybody's got a copy of that, and you know, I need it for the collection, because it's fairly arbitrary, really. You know, it's got to be rooted. Ultimately, it's got to be rooted in some kind of interest in that artist, or you want to hear that music. I mean, that's what it all boils down to for me. It's the desire to hear the music. You know, well, you know, I mean, when I was a kid, and it all goes back to this, you know, I certainly had no rules for myself when I was buying records. I bought what I wanted to listen to, and that's what I still do to this day. You know, I bought this because I want to hear what Linda Ronstadt sounds like. You know, I just want to hear a Linda Ronstadt album because I've never heard one. I've never owned a Petula Clark album. I thought this looked like a nice release. I may well enjoy it. I do like female vocalists. This one, I am actually collecting Motown Chartbusters albums, so this one actually this is down Andy's alley. I am collecting Motown Chartbusters albums, which is why I picked this up. And this is a record that I see around, and I was curious about it. I've seen a few people talking about it on the VC and saying it's an interesting Sinatra record. I do have Sinatra records in my collection. I do like him to an extent. I'm not a big fan of his. I don't pick up Sinatra records generally, but this is one that I kind of hear about a lot, and I've heard people talking about it and you know, saying it's an interesting record. And you know, at $2.99 in good condition, I'm not going to leave it there. And you know, like I said, all four of these albums went straight to the heart of my. You know, they didn't break my rules, my guidelines. So even though I didn't actually, I'd not brought those guidelines or rules into the forefront of my mind while I was buying them, but I came home and drew up that list in an attempt to see if I could answer Andy's questions. So now I leave it to you now. Do you have any rules or guidelines which either kind of let you buy something in a shop or prevent you from buying something in a shop? And yeah, I look forward to hearing all about that. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.